Hey everyone, welcome to CF Online. I'm really glad you're here today. Whether you're joining us from across town, hello, or somewhere around the world, this right here is where you belong today, I think. And I want you to just take a breath to settle in. And I hope that this will be a moment that will help you really reconnect with God and with one another. In other words, if you are multitasking, this is me giving you permission, let's say that, to pause for just a moment. It's good. Today, we are in part 2 of our series, Basics. It's a teaching series about the life-giving practices that shape who we are becoming. And then today, Pastor John Orozco will talk about worship through singing and about how worship is more than music. Because, you know, some of you sing like angels, but some of us sing like enthusiastic neighbors. Everybody's welcome here. No, worship can actually be a rhythm that forms our hearts, renews our minds, and then draws us back to Jesus. Basics, you know, the series, it sounds simple, but simple doesn't always mean it means it's easy. Hey, also a quick word about the season we just entered this week. On Ash Wednesday, we began Lent, and Lent is a beautiful 40-day season of reflection, of prayer, making space for God. And it's not too late to begin if you're just now hearing this, or you forgot. Many people choose a simple fast during Lent. Some people step away from social media, some coffee or alcohol, sugar, something else that tends to fill up too much space in life. And then the goal is not to deprive yourself, the goal is attention. Because when you remove something, it allows room for God to meet us. And then during this season, during this teaching series, you can also receive a cool daily text prompt to guide you. You can use the QR code on the screen here to sign up, or the link in the chat, and then let these next weeks become a really meaningful rhythm of renewal. That would be a cool title for this Lent season. And this month, as we honor Black History Month, we remember not just well-known names, but also the amazing courage of people like Claudette Colvin. Do you know about her? She was just 15 years old. And this is months before Rosa Parks, when Claudette refused to give up her seat on the segregated bus because she believed injustice was just not acceptable. I love teenagers. Her decision and her bravery helped spark legal action that eventually ended bus segregation in Montgomery. Man, stories like that remind me that courage is not about fame or age or recognition. Often it's ordinary people just choosing the next right thing, even when it's hard. So as we continue today, may we also ask ourselves a simple question: what does love require of us in our time, in our community, and then in the small choices we make each day? Before we get going, a quick invitation. If Cornerstone is your home church, your generosity is what makes this possible. Your giving makes sure that care and the community and work that God is doing through this church can happen. So you can give anytime using the link on your screen or in the chat. Thank you for being part of this together. And one more invitation, that's it. I'm almost out. We would love to see you this week. Join us for prayer on Zoom. It's going to be early Wednesday morning this week. It's a really cool kind of a grounding time where before the day starts, we pause, we pray, we start the day with God, and you can find the link and details in the chat on our website. It's at 6 a.m. this Wednesday. Now, let's open our hearts and prepare to worship. Here is John Orozco with part 2 of Basics. Wherever you are, however your week has been, you are in the right place. Welcome to Cornerstone Fellowship.
Welcome to Cornerstone. It is very good to be with you today. And if we haven't met yet, my name is John, and among many things, I am the Convergence Pastor at our Livermore campus. You can email me about information about what that title means. I'm a husband and a father of 4 incredible kids. Only they're not really kids anymore. They're grown. They're almost as tall as me, which that's really not saying much. And 2, soon to be 3 of the 4 are driving. And every now and again, I think to myself, where did the time go? So my wife, Rebecca, together we'll grab the baby albums off the shelves and we'll revisit the beginning, where it all started. In fact, just last week, we checked out these old ultrasound photos on the first pages of their albums. And it's so amazing to consider how everyone, me and you, we were all once just like this little, just beginning life. Well, I remember those doctor visits, walking into the room with my wife to have these ultrasounds done and needing that sound to be ultra, turned up to 11, just cranked. And it would be dead silent in that room until we heard their hearts pumping through the stereo system, that pulse perfectly in rhythm, that pattern so important. Their lives forming and growing and developing, their condition dependent on that heartbeat, that rhythm of repetition. Well, it was just 2 days after our 3rd child, Isaiah, was born, where Rebecca and I, we were getting discharged from the hospital and we were ready to take him home. And this nurse, she comes in to sign us out, but she happened to notice him breathing really abnormally, really fast. There was something that was off, and thank God they didn't let us leave. They checked him out, and long story short, he ended up having heart surgery just 12 days after he was born. Heart surgery to repair this narrowed artery and seal a valve that was supposed to begin closing after his first breath in order to divert his blood flow to his lungs. His breathing, it was distressed. His condition, it was deteriorating because his heart couldn't properly send the blood to his lungs to pick up the oxygen that he needed to survive. Well, thank God for modern tech, because they got in there and they sorted it right out. And in so many other points in history, barring a miracle, we wouldn't have our son today. It's amazing how much is dependent on that pattern. And you don't really think about it much until you maybe run up a flight of stairs or you do some anaerobic exercise and you feel a little out of breath, your heart just pounding. But if you've gone through what I've gone through with my son, then you're just hyper aware. My wife and I, we made sure as he grew up in the many follow-up doctor's visits that everything was still running smoothly. The pattern, the pulse, the rhythm, it was good. Well, here's a picture of my dude today, alive and well, thriving, playing hockey. I just love to witness who he's become. Listen, patterns matter. On a biological level, the rhythm of the heart, it matters. It's what allows you and I to grow and to develop and experience life. It's one of those things that determines the health of our existence. But it's not the only pattern that's important. As a parent, you quickly discover that there are so many other patterns that oxygenate or deoxygenate life. You really become obsessed with patterns, your kids' repetitive patterns of thinking or patterns of behavior, patterns of speaking, their sleep patterns, their eating habits, their schedules and routines, their patterns of attention. We think about the gaming and the television and the social media that they consume. Each of these patterns influencing the health of their physical, their psychological, their spiritual condition. And how about for us adults? Think about our work patterns, the pace that we keep, the hours where we grind, the rhythms of rest that we ignore, or think about our relational patterns. How do we handle conflict? How we tend to withdraw, or how we lash out? Or think about our financial patterns, how we spend and save. and how that causes us to stress out. We think about physical patterns or spiritual patterns or our thought patterns. For each of us, you and I, we begin with a heavy dependence on one pattern, our heartbeat. But life quickly becomes affected by so many other important patterns. And with all of this in mind, the title of this message is The Condition of Repetition. We're in part 2 of this teaching series that we've titled Basics, where we're looking at basic, life-giving, repetitive practices in the life of Christ followers that form and inform our condition as individuals and, more importantly, as a community. And in part 1, we looked at the importance of reading scripture and reading it correctly. And today, we're going to consider the important pattern of worship through singing when we gather. And just let me quickly say, we worship God with our entire lives, but today is not about that holistic worship sense. Today is specifically about the way that we worship through singing when we gather. When you come to church, you'll quickly notice this rhythm. When we gather, we sing. This is common. This is our common rhythm as a church. It's been the rhythm for churches throughout church history. I've spent my whole life attending church gatherings, and without fail, singing has always happened. Some songs that we sing are older, using uncommon but beautiful poetic language. Sometimes the songs are newer and they use simple lyrics. I grew up in a church where we would have during worship, we'd have baskets out and they'd be filled with tambourines and shakers and maracas for everyone to grab and join in on the worship. It was so fun. It could get a little extra at times, but we were always having a good time. I've been to churches where people shout and they dance and they raise hands during worship, as well as churches where the decorum, it's far more constrained. Hands may be folded, very polite. I've been to churches that have multilingual music, some churches with big bands and others with no instruments whatsoever, just voices. Some worshipful moments at churches are very introspective and others are just full-on celebrations. Some are liturgical, others very mystical. Many forms, not necessarily better than the other, but they all shared this one thing in common. For all of these churches, as they regularly gathered, they regularly sang. This pattern of singing influencing the condition of each community, their unity, and understanding of this all-important thing, who Jesus is. Now, today's teaching, it's not about genres or stylistic preferences, but it's about the why. Why is this practice of worshiping through singing built into the rhythm, the pattern of our gatherings? So open your Bibles or Bible apps to Colossians chapter 3. It's after Philippians and it's before 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. And so let's all get there together. And here, the Apostle Paul is writing this letter from prison. He's in Rome and he's writing it to the Colossian church. There was a man named Epaphras who he traveled from Colossae to Rome to tell Paul what was going on, what was happening in that church. And this is what was happening. There were false teachers making things really, really difficult and complicated and trying to establish new rhythms, new patterns, these man-made rules, and they were trying to introduce ceremony. They were teaching the people to worship angels and other gods. And so Paul responds and he writes this letter to oppose these teachers and to remind them that it's Jesus over everything. And that Christ's death alone saves us from our sin and it frees us from these man-made rules into new life. And so let's read Colossians 3, verse 1 and 2. Verse 1, it says, "Since then you have been raised with Christ, set your hearts on the things above where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things. These words are for those who trust and believe in Jesus. That he's done something new in you and in me, that he set something right, but notice how being raised with Christ doesn't mean that we're perfect today. Yes, we're being made new, but we still have this tendency to return to destructive patterns of thinking and behaving. Let's think about it like this. There have been moments where it's felt like I've been given a new lease on life. Maybe I'm finally in shape. Maybe I finally lost the weight. I'm feeling healthy. I'm living a really disciplined life. I've been saying no to bad habits. I'm on a new routine, new pattern, new habits. I've got a good diet. Maybe I've recovered after a really rough surgery or from a health scare, but that doesn't matter because you know what? I still want that donut. I know it's bad for me, but there are these habits of thinking, behaving that cause me to return to patterns that got me there in the first place. Listen, yes, we have been raised with Christ, but I have a role, you have a role, we have a role to play in all of this. I've got to set up a new rhythm, a new pattern of thinking. We are raised, but we have a role to set up a new rhythm. I've got a new rhythm. Say that with me. I've got a new rhythm. Romans 12:2 says this, do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. I've been raised with Christ. I've got a new rhythm. All right, let's skip down Colossians chapter 3, 5 through 10. Let's read this. It says, put to death, therefore, whatever belongs to your earthly nature. Sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires, and greed, which is idolatry. Because of these, the wrath of God is coming. You used to walk in these ways in the life you once lived. Listen, that's the old me. That's the old me. But let's continue on, verse 8. But now you must also rid yourself of all such things as these: anger and rage and malice and slander and filthy language from your lips. Do not lie to each other, since you have taken off your old self with its practices. Its practices. Listen, practice makes perfect on both sides of the equation. You and I can practice getting really good at anger. You and I can get really good at greed and gossip and commiserating and complaining. And how do we do this? We do this by walking in these ways, one step at a time, developing a pattern, a practice. But I'm here to tell you today, and Paul would say, I've been raised with Christ. I've got a new role. I've got a new rhythm, a new habit, a new practice. Let's keep reading. And I promise you, we're going to get to the singing part. As a matter of fact, we're actually already in it. You might not know it yet, but Colossians 3, let's read verse 10 through 14. And have put on the new self, which is being renewed in knowledge in the image of its creator. Here there's no Gentile or Jew, circumcised or uncircumcised, barbarian or Scythian, slave or free, but Christ is all and is in all. Verse 12, therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourself with something new, with compassion and kindness and humility and gentleness and patience. Bear with each other and forgive one another if you have a grievance against someone. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. And over all these virtues, put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. Listen, one of the things that I ask my worship leaders to do before they lead their songs on a Sunday is to ask themselves these three questions. I want them to consider this while they practice the songs that they're about to sing throughout the week. The first question, what pattern is this song breaking? What new pattern is this song making? And why is this a pattern worth taking for me? First, what pattern is about to be put to death? What old self are these words that we're about to sing? What old self is being challenged? And then pattern making. How does this song help me to remember that I am raised with Christ into something new? How does this encourage us to put on the new self? And then I ask the worship leaders to consider this. Why is this a path worth taking for me? Why is it important for me personally to sing these words with conviction? Listen, there are so many patterns of thinking that when we sing and when we shout and when we declare songs, the things that we sing, they challenge our patterns of thinking. Listen, I used to worry, but I've got a new rhythm. As I worship, I cast my cares on you, Jesus. I used to lash out and let my anger control my tongue, but I've got a new rhythm. Now I sing loud and I allow the Lord to soften this heart of stone and give me a heart of flesh. I used to be so arrogant and always think about myself, but I've got a new rhythm, a new pattern of thinking, new habit, a new self, and it's changing my condition. And so when I sing about his mercy, my pride, it falls to the floor. He's the one who becomes the most important. It's his love for all of us. It transforms my love for others. I used to let my sinful thoughts drag me into the mud, but I've got a new rhythm. Because I meditate on his words and his promises, I've got a new rhythm. I used to foolishly give my attention away, surrendering it to things that became idols, but I've got a new rhythm and it's changing my condition. And as I worship, when I sing, I recognize that my attention has a new assignment. My attention, it belongs to Jesus. I've got a new rhythm. Let's keep reading. Colossians 3:16 and 17. I love this. I've been waiting to get here. It says, let the message of Christ dwell among you richly as you teach and admonish one another with all wisdom through psalms, hymns, and songs from the Spirit, singing to God with gratitude in your hearts. Let's look at three things. First, the message, or in other translations, it says, let the word of Christ. Let's look at teaching and admonishing. And then the third thing, through the avenue of psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs from the Spirit. First, the message of Christ. Remember, Paul is confronting these false teachers that Epaphras informed him were invading this Colossian church with a doctrine that was Christ and. It was Christ plus. Yes, Christ, but also these human thought patterns, human ceremony, human ritual and obligation and proof of worth. It was yes, Christ, but also worship of angels. It was yes, Christ, but just a sprinkle, a dash, a hint of other patterns of worship. The danger for this Colossian church and for us is the decentering of Jesus Christ in our worship. Last week, we talked about how all of Scripture, every page of the Bible, of the book that we read, it points to what only Jesus would fulfill. How everything that we do and experience has to be seen through the lens of who Jesus is. So let the message or the word of Christ dwell in you richly. And what is it? What is the word of Christ? The message of Christ. This is the testimony of Jesus, the testimony of his power that we read about in Genesis 1, where all things were created through him, the testimony of healing as he touched a man with leprosy in Matthew 8. It's the testimony of this new kingdom in Matthew 4 as he elevated a woman that culture tried to crush, revealing to her at that well what true worship is, inviting her into it. What's this testimony? It's the testimony of the cross in John 19, where love overcomes the sting of our sin and death. It's the testimony of the resurrection in John 20, declaring that we are raised with him into the new, into new life. It's a testimony in Matthew 28, where Jesus, he calls us to bring his kingdom here to earth, making disciples. Let the message of Christ dwell in you richly. His message, who he is, in you abundantly, richly. Listen, every now and again, I've got what feels like, at least to me, a lot of money. It might be a tax return that I get, or it might be something that, maybe it feels like, hey, I got a little bit extra. And in those moments, you feel like, oh man, I got something in there, You ever feel that way? I mean, maybe you were really, really young and your parents gave you, I don't know, 10, 20 bucks, and you thought there was nothing that you couldn't afford. All the candy, like so much candy. There's this extravagance to the feeling of being provided for, and like you have now resource to spend. And so in those moments, like I'll spend it on my family. I'll take my family on a vacation, and maybe for that week, for that moment where I feel like I have a little bit of something extra, we go out and hey, what do you need? You want to buy that dress? I got you. Let's go eat over here. Let's go buy these glasses that I know none of us need. We have a really, really good time. And we don't just have a good time. Listen, we don't care what other people think about us having a good time. We're loud, we're probably obnoxious, but we're living lavishly. We're living like we've got something. And here Paul is saying, let the message of Jesus, the testimony of Jesus dwell in you. Let it dwell, let it saturate your mental, spiritual, emotional bank account richly. And this bank account has no bottom. And when you begin to realize the wealth that you possess in Jesus, you just won't care what anyone else thinks. You'll spend it all. You'll live and worship with an extravagant freedom that might offend somebody who's watching. They might get jealous at your freedom. They might not understand. In the Old Testament, King David, he danced undignified in worship. In the New Testament, Paul is in jail, in chains, and that still couldn't contain his worship. His circumstance didn't determine his worship. And I'm sure folks were looking at him sideways like, you don't understand he was rich in Christ. There's an account of a woman in Matthew 26 who breaks a really expensive alabaster jar, pours it on Jesus in worship because she understood how rich she was in Christ. She didn't care what anyone thought. And those who watched her were indignant. Listen, there's something curious that happens. Becoming rich in Christ, it purifies this idea of power. It grants you the power over every watching eye to just worship anyways. It breaks the chains of permission structures and the feeling like, no, I can't, because what if people think that what I'm doing, the way that I'm expressing my love to you, if I don't care, I'm going to worship anyways. It doesn't let the thoughts or opinions of others hold you back from living free to worship and celebrate and testify of the goodness of God. Your whole life for his glory. And you know who Jesus is and what he's done for you, so it doesn't matter what people think. It doesn't matter what pours out from you or what it looks like. You worship anyways. Let the message of Christ dwell in you richly. His mercy, it runs deep. His grace, endless. And when the wealth of his kindness meets our depravity, we can't help but just know and experience the richness of the message of Christ. So our response is, no matter who's watching, we worship anyways. But it's not just about you. As we worship, as we sing, it's about the community of believers. It says this, let's continue on. As you teach and admonish one another with all wisdom. Which implies that you participate in the teaching. There's a teaching that happens as we sing. And not only do you participate in the teaching, it also implies that you and I are teachable. But when we gather and when we sing with one another, I recognize that we're all experiencing different circumstances. And there are moments where, maybe I watch you sing and the words that you're singing, I have a hard time singing, but you're singing it with conviction and joy, and you're celebrating. But as I watch you, it compels me. There are moments when I watch you worship and I know that there was a job loss going on in your life. And so the way that you worship, it teaches me. There are moments where I watch you worship and I know you're struggling to pay bills and you're still singing, I trust in God. There are moments where I watch you worship and I know that your relationships are struggling and you're still singing, I'll take heart, and it teaches me. I'll tell you what, it ministers to me. I learn from you. Your family, your friends, your kids, your neighborhood church knows what you're going through. And as they watch you worship, they learn from you. Or maybe you're not feeling it. But you need to gather around other believers who will sing it for you, because I'll tell you what, it's not just about feeling. It's not about, does this song maybe hit me or resonate with me emotionally? Or it's not about, I would sing this if it fit my genre or style or preferred preference. What it's about is, are you teachable? Are you willing to be taught by the gathering? Are you willing to teach and admonish one another, the gathering of believers? Sometimes we teach one another by allowing our whole body to respond in worship. Sometimes it's standing, sometimes it's singing and shouting, or it's clapping, or it's raised hands. Sometimes it's sitting, or it's quiet listening, or kneeling. How we participate in worship through singing, it teaches others about how we can bring our whole selves into worship. At Neighborhood Church a few weeks back, at my house, we had some guests, and I love it. My neighbors are inviting neighbors. And so this couple, Stephanie and Chester, they invited another couple, Jan and Steve, who live right around the corner. And Steve, unfortunately, he struggles with Alzheimer's, dementia, and it's pretty severe. So Stephanie said, you know what? Steve's having a hard time attending church because the struggle is really difficult. So it's really cool that we're having this thing in our neighborhood, because I think they'll come. So she also asked me, if they come, would you mind singing an old hymn? Because he seems to come back when that happens. So my neighborhood church, the regulars, they had no idea what was happening, but there was about 30 of us in the living room, and we were singing How Great Thou Art. And Steve just lit up, and he started singing with us. And it was so cool to see that my community would participate in this singing together, letting the message of Christ teach and admonish and encourage specifically Steve in that moment. Then just last week, I was at the grocery store, and this older man, he looks at me and he stops and he just big smile, like, I know you, but I wasn't quite sure who. He looked familiar. And then around the corner, I saw his wife grab his hand to lead him on. And suddenly I realized it was Steve. I mean, he had a better memory than I had. And I'd been preparing for this specific message. And in that moment, I just felt the Lord confirming my why. And there was a condition of repetition in his life that caused him to recall the goodness of God as we sang together, even to the point where he remembered me. Again, verse 16, let the message of Christ dwell among you richly as you teach and admonish one another with all wisdom through psalms, hymns, and songs from the Spirit, singing to God with gratitude in your hearts. And I want to emphasize the idea that this teaching and admonishing with all wisdom happens through the container of a song. Now, is the song in and of itself worship? No. In the same way that saying, I love you to someone is not the love itself. I mean, those words that we say to one another are containers for a commitment, a dedication to someone. They describe a lived experience with someone who means something to us. The words I love you are not love themselves, but they contain a meaning worth speaking to a loved one. These songs are the container that brings a community together in the same way that a kitchen table does. I mean, sure, you can grab your food and eat it on your own and head over to your room or the living room to watch television by yourself, and you'll still get the same nourishment from it. But there's something special about sharing a meal with another person, with your community, with your people around a table. When we gather, these songs offer us an opportunity to teach and encourage one another, all while directing our heart of gratitude and thanksgiving to God. These songs that we sing, they change the nature of the patterns of thinking that we so easily fall into, the patterns of complaining and catastrophizing and commiserating over how broken life is. Instead, when we gather, we break these patterns of thinking through the repetition of songs that cause us to view our condition through the lens of Christ. So again, we let the message of Christ dwell among us through psalms, hymns, and songs from the Spirit, singing to God with gratitude in our hearts. And what are these different genres of songs? Well, psalms are songs from the book of Psalm. These songs do well to help us understand our emotional life in relationship to God. And what are hymns? Hymns are songs that contain the message of Christ, the doctrine that we believe, the creation story, God's redemptive story, and our call to join him. And what are spiritual songs? Spiritual songs are songs that are provoked from what God is doing in the here and now, where we recognize, God, I felt you, I experienced your presence, and I'm just going to write a song right now, today, that glorifies you because of what you've done in this moment. All of these songs act as containers that testify about Jesus. Now, throughout this next week, these prompts that you'll receive if you opt in to receive our text are going to be centered on worship through singing. We'll send out a Psalms playlist and a hymns playlist and a spiritual songs playlist, an instrumental, reflective playlist, as well as meditations on worship. And each of these prompts are meant to break destructive patterns of thinking, making new pathways that are worth repeating, creating a new condition of repetition in our lives. So as we close, let me leave you with this challenge from Colossians 3:16. Let the message of Christ dwell among you richly as you teach and admonish one another with all wisdom through psalms, hymns, and songs from the Spirit, singing to God with gratitude in your hearts. Love you. Thanks for being with us today.
We are in the teaching series called Basics, or where we go back to the basics of what it means to follow Jesus. And John Orozco is here to teach. I love it when you teach.
Thank you.
I love this message.
I know. It too.
Okay, you started off by saying worship is not just about music, which I agree. But
yes,
just so we get to know you better, what is a song that has shaped your faith?
Yeah.
And kind of you still put it on if you need to be recentered in your life, just a song. And why is it that song?
And right now, there's a song called Son of Suffering, and it is like super triumphant that I've been listening to. I listen to Center a ton. I mean, these songs I will literally put on repeat.
Okay.
And there's just like this, big cymbal hits, and like, I love that. And so if you ever catch me driving over the Altamont Pass,
that's what you do.
That is what I'm doing. Yeah.
That's really cool. I like that. You had a small part of your message talked about how, I don't know if you call them pagan practices, but other practices invaded the Colossian church at worship times. What practices in leading for yourself, leading the church, have you have to remove because it started to look like, yes, Christ, but also and? Do you have any examples of that for yourself or for us?
Yeah, I mean, there's just patterns of thinking that dominate my level of hope. Sometimes it is like news feeds and things that I allow myself to get saturated in that make me think human beings will never be loving to each other, kind, compassionate to each other. And so I come here and I sing a song with a room of people who are realizing that Jesus is making us all new, all of us from different walks of life. And then you realize, you know what? There is a way where people come together who otherwise wouldn't be together. And it breaks patterns of feeling despondent about life.
Okay.
And then there's also just, it's easy to complain and be frustrated. And that's like the nature of a lot of conversations. That's kind of where, we meet each other as we sit around a table, have coffee. Oh, this isn't great life. When you think about Jesus, that complaining turns into something different. The pattern of thinking when it's encouraging. And you go, actually, you know what? Like the level of, again, catastrophizing and thinking about how bad life is, actually, I feel hope when I walk out of this church. Just because when I got here, for whatever reason, it just broke this typical pattern of thinking.
That's really
and I did it with folks who I love, and we're all not perfect people, but for whatever reason, we get around these songs.
Pointing at me.
Yeah, folks who I love. It is you, and it encourages me.
I love it. So you talked about rhythms shaping our condition. I'm so glad we're doing this during Lent, by the way. So there's maybe someone today in church, attending church online, feeling stuck in unhealthy patterns. What's maybe a small but realistic step that they can take towards forming a new rhythm with Jesus?
Well, I mean, some of it's just like literally starting, but recognize, so I do want to be clear about this. Life is challenging, but we rarely create like bracketed times to sit into what's really going on. I have moments where, my heart is actually broken and I need to lament and I need to go, I'm really disappointed.
Yeah.
But you can ruminate and stay there. And some things that are healthy is to go, you know what, I'm giving myself a half hour to be in this. And then I'm gonna open up my word, I'm gonna put on this Christian music, and I'm gonna saturate in a new frame of thinking, and I'm going to recognize that maybe that didn't change specifically the circumstance or the situation, but I'm not going to wallow in it because I'm not solving anything this way. And so I'm going to cast my care on who Jesus is, and maybe that perspective will cause me to see whatever I'm going through in a new light. And so I hope that the takeaway isn't ignore everything that's terrible, but it's important that we create patterns of thinking that break this fears that we have, the despondency that we feel, because there is hope in Jesus. And for whatever reason, when we sing together, when we hear messages together, it flips that.
It totally does.
Yeah.
There's one question that I wrote as you were talking. I was trying to imagine the people that are attending church with us today, and I'm thinking that there's some people who are struggling to feel included or feel like they don't really belong in worship spaces. That's a reason, perhaps also why they're joining us online in their own space. What does it look like for a worshiping community to truly make room for everyone, especially people who feel different, who feel distant, who feel excluded?
Yeah, I mean, there is a level of, am I allowed to sing this with you, or feel this with you? Jesus revealed what worship was to a woman who felt like an outsider. It wasn't to somebody who was a great musician and had it all together, and the community viewed as like a beacon of, Christian whatever.
Right.
But all she was to Jesus was loved, and he revealed to her that there's a time coming when we worship in spirit and in truth, in honesty, just as you are. I'll deal with whatever needs to be dealt with. But what's most important is that you come to me just as you are. And he loved her, and he restored her, and he healed her, and did more through her than the rest of her community.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah. So just know, even if because we're human beings and we suck sometimes. But even
Church would be great if it wasn't for the people.
Yeah, even if we don't,
right?
Jesus invites you in.
Yeah. Oh. Well, as we close, here's a challenge I have for you this week. Why don't you grab hold of some repeatable rhythm of worship through singing? Let me go there. Maybe it's playing that song each morning using the playlist that are shared with you via the daily text prompt. Maybe it's singing quietly while you're walking. Maybe it's listening and praying through the words, on your commute, like you were saying on the Altamont. And then repeat it every day this week. Your aim here, consistency. And imagine, church, what would happen if we did this together. I'm convinced that our attention would slowly shift back to Jesus, and our minds would grow clearer, our old patterns would begin to loosen, to change, and the new life that Jesus has for us would start to take root. And then when we gather again, we don't come empty. We will come formed. We become formed by worship, formed by Christ, formed together. And speaking of being formed, don't forget to sign up for those daily text prompts created by our team. You can use this QR code right here on the screen to sign up to receive one text message daily that will take you to the prompt written specifically for that day. And I also think there's something special about being on the same page across the miles, across the time zones every day. And then finally, let me leave you with a question to help you take this a little further. We'll keep it on the screen for a moment. You can talk about it with somebody near you, share it in the chat, send it to a friend, write it in your journal. Here's the question. What is one rhythm you repeat that is shaping your life? And is it leading you towards Jesus or away from him? Thanks so much for being here. I can't wait to see you next time. Hey, wait, before you go, 3 things. First, consider becoming one of Cornerstone Fellowship's financial partners. Your donations will ensure that you'll be able to continue enjoying helpful and hopefully life-changing messages like the one you just watched. And then number 2, please share the link to this message with anyone who you know needs it or will be blessed by it, or by posting the link to your own personal social media platforms, all of them. And finally, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell so you'll be alerted whenever we post more content. Thanks for watching.